Alright, hello, and welcome to the next in the series of the lore videos for the upcoming campaign, World of Saga 3 Asunder. So, thought I'd start with looking at the map of the world before we reveal who we're going to be doing this week. You should be able to see, you just click on the video, but hey. This is the map of the West. Everything on this map is much smaller than what you're about to see. Even though Kildanian and Valenreath are pretty massive, they're not as long as Gensen and Menshai, which we're going to cover today. The East, the Mist Continent. So, just letting you know, places in the world. You can see there in the east of the map is Gensen and Menshai on their own little dark green place, and the Asunder in the north. We'll cover the Asunder next time. But we are covering this week Gensen and Menshai. This is basically, from what you can see here, this is, you can see the I've made a bit of a mistake there where it says Gensen. There should be a gulf underneath that, but there isn't in that picture because I colored over it by accident. But this is the continent that is in the east off that map. So if you can see on the left hand side there, it says go west to Kildanian, which is, the peninsula that we just saw. And, that's about it really. You go north to Asunder, as it says at the top there. So as you can see on, the other map, the Asunder in the north. So you can see Valenreath, Kildanian and the Asunder are all on this one supercontinent, basically. That engulfs, that whips around everything else in a crescent-like shape, and the island of the Mist Continent, which Gensen and Menshai are on, sits aside from all that. It's an island continent. So, a little quick drink here. So, Gensen and Menshai. As you can see, the general lay of the land there. I've not put much on this map. I've got a huge map that I've actually drew in real life. I've yet to put it in digital form though. I will do. But this is a very simplified map of the continent. As you can see, Gensen is there in the north and Menshai is in the south. All of this continent used to be under the proviso of Menshai, like literally all of it. Gensen broke away and started its own states after that though. So as you can see the major city there, there's Menshai itself in the middle, at the bottom there, and there's Jupei and Kairu at the top there, which is the capital city of Gensen. Got Shade City there and the Mistvale Mountains, which are the historical borderland between Gensen and Menshai. At the top there, you can see the island of Saga. That was the staging point for the Asunder invasion of Gensen, which we will cover later on. So, let's get to the actual meat of why we're here. That is the actual east. What you're going to be seeing in this series, and well in this video, is a general overview of the east. And as you can see, most of my inspiration for Gensen and Menshai comes from the East as we know it. I'm absolutely fascinated by the Sengoku Jidai and other periods of Japanese medieval history, and also the dynasties of China as well. The Ming Dynasty, Qin Dynasty, all Tang Dynasty. Tang's probably my favourite because they're just a bit, they're insane. But so I've got a lot of respect for the culture that I'm using as a template for Gensen and Menshai. This isn't a typical Western, throw it in, make it old hat, make it all, oh, there's samurai everywhere, there's this, there's that. No, it's a respectful take on Japanese and Chinese medieval culture, which was a lot more fluid than you think. A lot of people think that in the East it was always rigid, and it was always, you couldn't do anything, you couldn't go anywhere or do anything. It was all caste systems and all sorts. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't Tokugawa ES. It was somebody else. It was somebody else in Japan brought that in very late on in the Sengoku Jidai, which is the big, massive war of the medieval period. So quite late on, the caste system came into Japan, but originally in Japan, a commoner, somebody who's on the docks here, just selling fish, could rise up to become a very famous samurai, who then could rise up to become the shogun, the head of a mighty clan, in one lifetime. That was completely possible in Japan, and that is amazing. That there's no other country in the world, well, not in Europe certainly, where that could happen. So it's almost the last frontier of the fantasy story of that happening, which is why Gensen and Menshai are in Saga. That kind of conflicts like that, like Sekigahara and things like that. So I know a lot about Japanese and Chinese medieval history, and hopefully you'll see that I've used a lot of it in my portrayal of these two cultures. So I figured I'd read a lot of this verbatim from the guide, since, and that's where we are. So the Empire of Menshai, which is the oldest of the two powers that we're going to mention today. Long before the First Empire came to the shores of the East to establish its dominance of the world, a simple king among hundreds on the central Hraden plains of the Mist Continent looked upon his warring neighbours and glimpsed an opportunity. This king's name was Sun Harada, and for 95 years of his reign, he conquered and cajoled the kings who surrounded him into one force, using the White Tiger of Hraden as his sigil. His sons continued his legacy in building the great capital of Menshai, which literally translates to the city of mankind, or the city of humankind. Menshai spread from the central plains and would be ruled by the Harada dynasty until the coming of Sarpedon, which we've discussed in our Valenreath video, and the death of the last emperor of the line, Yang, which we also discussed in the Valenreath video. If you've not seen that video, go back and watch it. Menshai itself began as the dream of Sun Harada, a man obsessed with history and the immortality of his name. He penned The Effortless Dream, a tome in which he described how a new god came to him in a dream to show the world a brilliance that would bring it under one rule. This god, so Sun Harada claimed, was the Quench Lord, or the Lord who drinks the sun. In this dream, Sun Harada saw the city of Menshai stretch out before him and his sons, and their sons and theirs, laid brick upon brick of wood, then stone, until Menshai was the jewel of the world, with a massive 12-domed palace at its centre. To achieve this, he would have to spread his message the only way he knew how, by the sword. He brought 3 kingdoms to his heel by marriage, and then within 20 years conquered so much land surrounding him at such a rate that some cults actually began worshipping him in the East, until his death of old age later declared the falsehood in this. Regardless, when Sun Harada was finally upon his deathbed, his realm was one of the largest in the known world, rivaling that of the First Empire in size and scope, whilst the foundation stones of Menshai had already been laid. Oh, 1 second. Sorry about that, folks. I had Grandpa on the phone. So, Sun Hrada brought the kings who were around him on the main plain of Hraden underneath his one rule. And the foundation stones, as I said, of Menshai had already been laid. So the city is beginning to be built now. The main city, in the middle of the empire. The great capital in its empire would be expanded upon by his sons, who still went by the title King of Hraden at this time, until the first emperor, who finally conquered the free city of Dainlin on the western coast in what would be the year 512 of the Age of Valen, would be crowned Emperor of Menshai and ruler of the East. The empire sat in near stasis of centuries after this final conflict, before in the 888th year of the Age of Valen, a general of Menshai, Kuratan, would be sent north past the Mistvale Mountains, which you would see in this map. The Mistvale Mountains are in the middle. And the Mistvale Mountains are also on the picture in front of you. Those are the Mistvale Mountains, or part of them anyway. He was sent north past the Mistvale Mountains to quell rebellious princes there who had been raiding into Menshai territory. Kuratan would establish his own township and later city at the main pass through these mountains again, as you're seeing now on this screen. Let me just see this now. Oh yeah, he established this city in the main pass through the mountains to assure his armies could be resupplied, and for 2 decades he fought the Mistvale Wars with the northern princes until he finally crushed them. The problems for Menshai, however, were only just beginning in this regard. Kuratan claimed to have found the original copy of the Effortless Dream penned by Sun Hrada in the north, and what's more, he claimed that the king had come to him to pass on the knowledge of the to pass on the torch of the chosen prophet of the Quench Lord to Kuratan himself. Hailed as the chosen one of their god by the people of the north and his armies, Kuratan declared the independence of this northern territory from Menshai, naming it Gensen, or the chosen land, in the words of his god. As we see here, Gensen, above the Mistvale Mountains, and that's how it begins. The two realms of the east have been divided ever since. The Mistvale Wars rage now between Gensen and Menshai across the mountains of the same name for 7 centuries, 700 years, until the year 1599 of the Age of Valen, when the Crown Prince of Gensen, Hero, and the Emperor of Menshai, Yira, met at a ford in the mountains, which you either are just seeing, or no, you have not been seeing it now, met at a ford in the mountains and signed the historic pact that ensured peace between their two countries. The Mistvale Concord brought to an end a conflict that was so long and so drawn out that emperors and crown princes rise and fall in the history books as mere statistics lost in the tumult of war. The Mistvale Wars were a wasteful and petty struggle when one analyses what was actually gained by both sides. Armies would slaughter each other for a league of land only to lose that land the very next week, whilst trade and commerce would suffer greatly. Common people on either side starved in the gutters of the twinkling cities of the east, as emperors and princes fought over an insult given so long ago that no one remembered fully what had caused it in the first place. The armies of Menshai are mainly serfs and peasants that are trained year-round when not farming to be soldiers when called upon. The true core of the Menshai army is the Rushidan, however. The Rushidan act as Knights of the West do in leading armies and battalions. They carry 2 swords at all times as their badge of office, and number in the tens of thousands. So in this setting, Menshai, or medieval China, also has samurai. They're called Rushidan in this setting. You're looking at one right now, a Rushidan who is quite powerful in the binding. This is a binding lord of the east. The binding in the east is looked at with suspicion, but it's not. It's not persecuted as it is in Kildanian. and it's not got the complete freedom that it does in Valenreath. Basically, if you're a healer or in the military, you will go far if you are a binding user, but they're always looked at with suspicion, always. The Rushadan, as I said before, act as the knights, and they lead armies and battalions. They carry 2 swords at all times, and they number in the tens of thousands, which sounds like a lot, but in Menshai, not really. Highly trained from when they're able to stand, they are the razor's edge of the Menshai army. Most choose to fight from horseback, with these being the more blue-blooded of their armed forces, whilst some fight on foot, these being Rushadans new to the noble fold and unable to afford mounts. So, as I said before, in how it worked in medieval Japan and in China to some extent, anyone can become a samurai. Absolutely anyone with the skill can become a samurai, or a Rushidan as they're called in this setting. By the end of the Mistvale Wars, the Empire of Menshai was the established dominant power in the east, even with its northern territories shorn away by the power of Gensen. The Empire was, and is, the greatest exporter of exotic goods in all of Saga. The great golden city of Jupei sits straddling the Jupei Gulf and overlooks the vast Jupei Hills, which are bursting with golden gems. Spices are grown in the north of the Empire and ground to be sold, whilst cedar woods are cut and balanced for transport. This, however, pales in comparison to the Pale Ocean, a great swathe of the central plains of Menshai that is given over to some of the most advanced irrigation techniques known to man. Here, rice and grain has grown to such an extent that thousands of trading cogs with fat, deep bellies are filled to the brim with rice and grain for trade, with enough left to feed every citizen in the empire many times over. This means that the people of Menshai are extremely pliant to the will of their emperor and those who control this trade of food. The river Yaren is known to be the largest in all of the world, and flows from the tip of the Jupei Gulf and Jupei itself, right down through the heart of the empire to the complete other coast of Menshai, which we can see here. So where Jupei is, right to the other way into the Andes Oceans where it flows. What you're seeing in front of you now is a Rushidan, a Gensen version of Rushidan, who is also quite powerful in the binding. I really like this photo. It really does hammer home what the Rushidan are all about. You know, they are generally extremely competent warriors. Okay. This river, the Yaren River, feeds the Pale Ocean, the cities of the trading plain, Menshai itself, the trading cities of eastern Menshai, and finally cascades into the endless ocean beyond. Maritime trade flows through the Yaren River, however. Land trade flows on the Silk Road. This Silk Road is a straight road constructed with the help of the binding to keep it from ever eroding, and is a legacy of the First Empire's time in ruling the East. It runs in straight angular lines from city to city, port to port, outpost to outpost. While Sarpedon was the only Western Emperor of Menshai to reside in the state for any length of time, his conquests still have left an indelible mark on the people of this land, as we discussed last time. Not last time, in our Valenreath video. Valenreathian culture can be seen seeping into every part of the Menshai state today, as well as Gensen. Menshai now, for instance, has a fully developed Western feudal system of barons, dukes and lords, with an emperor at their head. Knights are referred to here as Rushidan, as we just covered, but follow many of the same customs as their Western counterparts, simply exchanging the Spire Church's involvement for their own Quench Lord. The religion of the Sun Drinker Creed, of which the Quench Lord is the god, is a religion that worships the night. As the Mist Continent sits higher up than Keldanian, it is steaming hot all year round, even when it is being pounded by rain in its monsoon seasons. As such, the sun became known as the untamable beast of the sky for many early settlers in the area, a giver and taker of life. The night, however, was a time of peace and a cooling of tempers As such, the pantheon of Eastern gods dissolved into one figure, the god of the void, who the folk of Menshai attest created the very cosmos from his own darkness. He returns daily to calm his son, the sun, and to watch over humankind as it sleeps. The Palace of Memories within the heart of Menshai is the seat of the imperial line of Menshai itself. The ruling dynasty that rules over it are known as the Satnius dynasty, and are named after a lover of Sarpedon during his time in the east, one said to be of Menshai blood who sired him a son, whose offspring still rule today. Whether this claim has any substantial weight, or if it is a fabrication, or whether the woman referred to as Satnia is actually Serenkea, who mysteriously then left her son in the east, is unclear. What is clear is that the claim, and that the people of Menshai still grudgingly acknowledge the right of Sarpedon to rule the east. When the fall of the First Empire came, Menshai declared that Hyen Satnius was their emperor once news of the First Empire's defeat in Keldanian reached them. They declared him to be the blood of Sarpedon. Hyen was at the time known to be the half-brother of Parmenion I, emperor of the First Empire, and so at least some of the claim of the Satnius line seems to be affirmative in origin. This is not a popular theory outside of Menshai, however, as it would suggest that Sarpedon, the great hero of the West, was not entirely faithful to Serenkea during their time together, and so this remains a contentious point between the powers. So, you've got Sarpedon conquers the East, and now the West and East sort of fight over his legacy. They fight over, who's truly the sons of Sarpedon, sort of thing. As it has happened with Alexander the Great. Just an aside, here the person you're seeing isn't a Gensen or Menshai warrior at all. That is an Asunda warlord by the name of Akiera Akerod, which we will get to a bit later on when we talk about Gensen. The cities of the east that are fed through by the Silk Road are legends to the rest of the world. Letharin was founded on the western coast of Menshai by the assassin Lethis, and remains a haven where anything can be bought or sold, and anything can lurk around any corner. It is a port held together by merchant princes who are somewhat independent from Menshai as long as they pay their fee of independence on a yearly basis. Pirates frequent the silver seas between Keldanian and Menshai, and most find welcome homes in Letharin. The other notorious, and perhaps the most notorious city within the east, is Shade City, which sits in the Venom Plains where the Yaren River runs through silt-ridden flats. Shade City is the capital of the slave trade in all of the world, and is secluded in the middle of blackened land caused by the constant stream of water pouring from the rainstorms and the Yaren River itself, turning the soil over in great black torrents. The bed slaves and whores of Shade City are said to be the finest in the world, and are trained for years to become what they are. Entertainment here is an art form, and many have been known to slip from trace when being seduced by the delight within its extravagant waterways and port holdings. Shade City is known to be the last major hub within Menshai, such as its remoteness, and forms part of the Yaren River's dying ebb and flow that cascades to the endless ocean that sits some 200 leagues further east. It is an independent city-state, beholden to Menshai for protection, and is the home of the Black Lotus Guild of Assassins, one of, if not the most efficient and feared assassins guilds in all of Saga. Here, poisons are brewed in steaming labs secretly and sold on one of the greatest open black markets known in the world. Shade City in the east and Letharin in the west are sister cities that, at least in theory, keep the malcontents of the east and beyond away from the precious fertile heartland of Menshai itself. So, as you can see on the map here, Shade City is over here. Letharin would be where it says West of Keldanian. It would be near there on the western coast of the eastern continent. So they bookend the empire basically, and all of the criminals and malcontents go to those two cities to keep them away from the precious heartland of Jupei, Menshai itself, and the vast pale ocean that's in the middle here. There are a lot of other cities in Menshai, but they're not put on there to save confusion, because those are the only ones I'm talking about today. So that is Menshai, an old empire, a very old empire. So now, after I've taken a drink, we're going on to the Principality of Gensen, and we will touch on the Asunder. But next time we'll be going over the Asunder in a lot more detail. So, the Principality of Gensen was created in the 888th year of the Age of Valen, when a general by the name of Kuratan, as we covered before, was sent north by the Empire of Menshai across the Mistveil Mountains to quell rebellious princes there. Before the year was out, however, Kuratan had found a tome within the hills of the north that he attested was the effortless dream penned by the legendary founder of the Empire of Menshai, and that this founder, Sun Freda, had come to him in a dream himself to show him where to find it. Kuratan rallied the princes of Gensen, and after annihilating some northern dissidents, proclaimed himself the first crown prince of Gensen and the chosen prophet of the Quench Lord. This remains the key separating point between Menshai and Gensen to this day, with the name Gensen meaning chosen land in the script of the Quench Lord. The people of Menshai, however, call the north the Fiorensen, or Lost Lands. The lands of Gensen are mist-swept and humid. Vast grasslands give way to rugged mountains, and the land has become known by many as the Rainbow State, thanks to the sheer number of them that occur during the wet winter months here. Rice paddies are a regular sight beside houses of thatch and timber. The castles of the princes of Gensen are raised in angular lines from the ground to serve as dwellings and fortresses of the lords of this land. The lords of Kaldanian have an equivalent in Gensen in the princes. The Kales and the Crown Prince, and the Knights in the Rushiden, or, as they're called in Asunder, Feuden. The Feuden of Gensen are bound by a sacred law known as the Accord. That means they are afforded every luxury. Every need is seen to. However, they must lay down their lives for their land if need be, and take a vow to commit ritual suicide should their city, town or prince fall and they yet live. This has been the way of the Gensen even before it was known by this name. The princes used their feuden to fight each other in this time instead of common enemies. However, when Kuratan arrived, few challenged him. If there is one thing the people of Gensen respect, it is a warrior, and Kuratan was the finest example of this they had yet seen. Honour is seen as a key principle of life in Gensen. The notions of how to live one's life changed little from after the arrival of Kuratan. Perfection is sought in all things, weakness is tolerated as long as it is fought against. Mercy is almost never shown to the defeated foe, if they are other feuden or citizens of Gensen. To outsiders, however, the armies of Gensen do show mercy from time to time. Each army of Gensen, however, is a small but impeccably trained group of feuden, and so they almost always fight to the death regardless. The men and women of Gensen are some of, if not the finest sword makers in the world beyond ferrite. Ferrite is, of course, the most precious metal in the world, found in the west, but not in the east. They create their blades from mist stone, which is taken from their side of the Mistveil Mountains. It is brilliantly bright and incredibly sharp when worked into a shape. Gensen freely trade with Menshai and other powers, however, they sought to keep their culture and identity distinct from those of the rest of the world, and so imports were free, but strictly controlled. Were free, but strictly controlled. The land of Gensen is dotted with fabulous deltas and rich fields. The hills of Temru are filled with precious gemstones and other fine metals, whilst the capital city of Cairo itself sits on the world's largest silver mine. Cairo is the Silver City, and is a sprawling fortified metropolis on the river of the same name. It shines on the central plains of Gensen and was founded by Kuratan, who sought to create a capital fit to be the home of the Quench Lord. It was constructed on the Moon Path, which is a straight road made of binding forged stone that runs from the shores of the Brimstone Ocean to the north through the Mistvale Mountains to the south. The city holds the Lotus Green, a palace built on stilts that elevated from the river that rages through the heart of the city. Carts stream past carrying goods and wares from all over the world, as feudants stroll the streets with their dual swords strapped to their belts. The city is a place of wonder for those who have never seen it. The Garmaland stands at the centre of it, a great statue of a feudant drawing his sword, looking forever outwards onto the plains of Gensen. The heirs of Kuratan ruled in relative peace, despite the constant warring with the Empire of Menshai, until the year 2567 of the Shattered Age, when the first Asunder ships were spotted crossing the Brimstone Ocean. The last Moon Wars, as they have become known, raged as soon as Asunder forces began landing in Gensen, and with the Gensen doctrine of battle not allowing surrender, blood was spilled in great torrents, as Akiera Akerod, who we saw in his Great War Beast before, led his warriors against this new continent. The Asunder drove into the heart of Gensen, paying for each step with hundreds of lives, it seemed. Their numbers, however, were without counting, and their leader, in Akiera Akerod, was a genius of logistics and an artist on the battlefield. Despite some successes against his forces, the Asunder Akerod were in the end victorious and laid siege to Cairo itself for so long that the people of the city resorted to eating the rats that plagued their sewers. The Kale of Rothan, as we covered in our last video, made his last stand against Akiera, and with his death, Akiera ordered every living thing within Cairo to be slaughtered. There were around 700,000 people within the city at that time. The Asunder sacked the city to the point that it is now a near blackened ruin and still in the process of recovery. The Asunder moved their court to the north of Gensen, and a place called the Moon Tower, which is the largest known structure in the world, as it shatters into the sky. This is still the seat of Asunder lords to this day. So if we see on the map here where Cairo is, look a bit further north on the Gulf there. That's where the Moon Tower is. Gensen today is a place of racial tension and constant murmurings of rebellion. It is a state under the heel of the Asunder. However, the race from the north are not cruel rulers. Their roads are safe of bandits, and the Asunder lord, Akiera Akerod, claims that a naked virgin carrying a pot of gold could traverse his lands without ever being molested. The people of Gensen have come to respect the Asunder now that the scars of the initial invasion have started to heal. There are none left alive that were around at that time, and bloodlines have intermingled to the point that some families call themselves Gensen Asunder rather than one or the other. Some, however, still look at the maps of the region and dream of a time when the Asunder are driven out. For many years it was illegal for the feudant to wear their swords in public, until so many of them challenged the Asunder overseers to duels to the death for this insult, that it was finally repealed. Tension runs high at times, however. Recently, Akiera Akerod ploughed vast riches from his empire, the largest empire in Saga at this point, into rebuilding Cairo, and has renamed it Akiera Cairo, to show his new vision of social and cultural integration. In the year 2635, he proclaimed at the Moon Tower that his lands be reorganised into the Asunder Empire, a move that has seen many in the world look to Gensen as the next power to be watched closely for expansion. The armies of the Asunder are vast, and if they were ever combined with that of the feudant, they would be near unstoppable. It remains to be seen whether the forces will cooperate, however. So, that is the East. So Gensen is now under the power of the Asunder, and after breaking away from Menshai, it's now under the power of the Asunder. The East is a place of, well, at least the north bit, as I said, is a place of tension, whereas Menshai is watching and waiting nervously. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, such a massive empire in the Asunder have come south and taken out your greatest rival in Gensen. They now hold most of the forces in the world under their sway, and they can't really go to Kaldanian because of the binding wastes which are there. You know, the Asunder can't really go to Kaldanian because of the binding wastes, and they can't really cross the steaming seas because their ships just aren't good enough. They're not sailors, the Asunder. They had mercenary ships to take them to Gensen because the Gulf is actually quite small there. So the Menshai have just seen Gensen be taken over by Akerod, who is now in his early 80s, so he's not going to last much longer, Akerod. And one of his two sons will come to power, and depending on which one it is, the Asunder Empire may be wanting to expand further south into Menshai. So, in fact, a lot of them already have. A lot of them are. There are a lot of Asunder raiding parties coming south into Menshai already and laying waste, because the Asunder are technically always at war. So, with everybody basically who's not under their command. So that is the east. That is Gensen and Menshai. One state is being timeless and ancient, and the other being young and new, and recently trying to get used to new conquerors who have unfortunately rampaged over their lands. Just like medieval Japan and China, there are a lot of similarities between Gensen and Menshai. They both have the same religion. They both have knights that are distinct from knights in Kaldanian and Valenreath. The only difference is one's called Rushiden in Menshai and one's called Feuden in Gensen. Although the Gensen people still call some of their knights Rushiden. You know, it's an interchangeable term up there. The key separating point is that Gensen broke away from Menshai and declares that its founder is actually the chosen prophet of the Quench Lord, whereas the Menshai state that their founder is the chosen prophet of the Quench Lord, and Kuratan is nothing but a pretender. So that's the East. We will go over the religions at a later date, like the Spire Church and the Quench Lord. We'll go over all of them at a later date, but I want to just get the powers out of the way first. Next time, we'll be heading north and going to the Asunder, which you see on this map of Kaldanian and Valenreath, up there, the Asunder. And obviously they are the conquerors of Gensen, so we'll be hearing a bit more about Gensen next time around. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time where we'll be covering the Asunder. So, have a good one folks, and I'll speak to you next time.